Happy Women's History Month. To celebrate, I'd like to tell you the story of Josie Westfall. She had an impact in our community by running the McDonough County Orphanage, but she also had some interesting other activities that I think we should look at. I'm not sure if we know all the details. Some things are lost to history, but I think this is a really good story. Josie Westfall was born in Macomb, Illinois in 1874. She lived with her family, which included two sisters, on East Carroll Street. The Macomb Daily Journal in 1888 lists her as attending the Central Normal School, which would have been a paid subscription school. She would have been about 13 at that time. So the question is, how did the McDonough County Orphanage begin, and what was Josie's role? In 1913, the county's Board of Supervisors provides $15 a month plus $10 for maintenance for a house at 1514 East Carroll, and Josie is appointed the matron. She has some experience already taking care of children. In 1907, the newspapers list her as being involved with a Methodist home in Normal, where she goes to help out. She also has Christmas drives with a friend where she collects items and toys to give to needy children in town. So people know her and they feel comfortable with her taking care of children. The chair of the county board at the time, John Graves, is quoted as saying, "The law will chase a thief across the nation, but will never find a man who deserts his family." McDonough County was not unlike many communities at the turn of the century. After the Civil War, many children were left orphans and institutions were created to take care of them. By 1910, there were 1,115 of these institutions taking care of 150,000 children. Also, it was not uncommon for children to work. In 1900, 2 million children between the ages of 10 and 15 worked in factories and farms. 1913 saw some changes that affected Josie's life. First, local merchant Joseph E. Wynn donated his house at 415 North Madison for the new McDonough County Orphanage. Also, the state of Illinois passed the Presidential and Municipal Voting Act, which gave women the right to vote for non-constitutional offices and the president. This was a tack that the suffragettes were taking to show that women could responsibly participate in elections. It's not clear if there was an organized suffrage movement in McDonough County. We do know that Grace Trout, who was the Illinois Equal Suffrage Association president, was in Macomb in 1914 as part of the Chautauqua series. She also traveled all over the state, including neighboring towns of Quincy and Galesburg. Now something really interesting happens. Josie decides that she's going to run for city judge of Macomb in the very first election with which women can vote. That election is scheduled for June 1st of 1914, and she's going to be running against an incumbent named Dean Franklin. He's a highly trained lawyer from a whole family of lawyers, and you kind of wonder why she did this. There's no record if she was a suffragette or if there was movements in town, but it's curious why she's sort of testing the water during a very tumultuous time around the issues of women's suffrage. Well, guess what? She wins. The numbers are really interesting. She receives 52% of the vote to Franklin's 36%. As you can imagine, Dean Franklin was not pleased with these results, and he decides he's going to challenge the election. He states that the Illinois Municipal and Voting Act only allows women to vote for constitutional offices, and a judgeship is a constitutional office, and therefore the women's votes should be thrown out. He has 19 more male votes than Josie does. Using this tack, Dean Franklin takes his case all the way to the Illinois Supreme Court. It takes about 2 years for them to hand down a decision in his favor. But in the meantime, Josie is sitting as city judge of Macomb and hearing cases. Many of her cases have to do with divorce. People had to show fault in the marriage, and it could be based on abandonment, mental illness, cruelty, or adultery. One would wonder if her experiences in the orphanage helped her understand the situation that women and men found themselves in, and she often rules in favor of women, giving them property, money, and custody of the children. The question still remains, though, was Josie Westfall a suffragette? I'm not sure. But the thing that is interesting and what piqued my curiosity about this story was that this case was cited in newspapers across the country, and often in newspapers that were dedicated to the suffrage movement. So maybe she's not a suffragette, but definitely her actions were used to advance the vote for women. Josie Westfall continued to serve the Macomb community through her work at the McDonough County Orphanage. By 1931, it became clear that a new building was needed, and a fundraising campaign was launched. They wrote letters, held fundraisers, and even trained the children to play musical instruments and perform to raise money. By November of 1931, a new building was ready for 43 children to move in. It was located at 815 East Jefferson. Josie continued to be the matron for another 10 years. In 1940, she fell ill and was unable to continue working. She died on June 3rd of 1941. At that time, the operations of the orphanage was turned over to the Salvation Army, and it continued till about 1950. By 1955, the building was sold and turned into apartments.